Good morning, everybody. This is the House Commerce and Economic Development Committee. Today is Friday, April 25th. It is 8:49 a.m. and we are here as we are every Friday morning with our intern, Helen Hargraves, although I think this is your last or second to last time with us.
Next last.
Second to last, penultimate meeting with Helen.
Yes.
Well, thank you. What do you
yeah.
have for us this morning?
Well, good morning, everybody. Sorry to join you from so far away. I woke up with a fever this morning, so probably not the person you want to join you in the room.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
For the record, my name is Helen Hargraves. I am the legislative intern for the House Commerce and Economic Development Committee this session. And a senior at the University of Vermont. And today I am bringing you continued research on non-compete agreements around the US. What I have, my main contribution for today is I put together a spreadsheet.
Sure.
If you have access to that at this point. And that essentially, sorry?
When did you send it to us?
It's posted if
supposed
you
to now?
refresh.
Okay.
And I also just I forwarded her email to you.
Great, thank you. We now have access to it.
Okay, perfect. So that, if you take a look, the format here is really helpful for just compiling all of the information that I've collected so far. As I talked about in my prior reports, I've been focusing on non-competes related to healthcare and franchises specifically. And these are a list of the most recent bills passed, as well as with the franchise statutes. One of them is significantly older. I believe the Minnesota one is from 2007, but the vast majority of these have been passed within the last 2 years. And as you can see by looking at it, the vast majority of the ones that have been passed in the past 2 to 5 years were related to healthcare. And most of them are amendments to pre-existing non-compete statutes that specify certain requirements or exclude healthcare professionals from being included in or from being included in the enforceability of non-compete agreements. And this is just, I mean, it helps you see like the variability really in how these are applied in different states. There are some states where the language is really minimal. And as you can see, any blank spot in the limit categories, income limit, geographic limit, scope limit, duration limit, any blank space indicates that that information is not included in the statute. But as I say in my report, the majority of limitations that are included pertain to duration and geographic scope. The most common for duration being 1 year and 3 years, and geographic limits ranging depending on the state. There are some income limits as well. You can see in Illinois, they have banned non-compete agreements for any employee that makes under $75,000 a year. And yes. Did someone have a question?
No, I think they were just clearing their throat. Thank you.
Sorry.
And in Maryland, as I reported last week, they put that limit at $350,000 a year for healthcare practitioners. The other requirements section just notes different aspects of the statute that are relevant. For example, in Connecticut, I note that the party seeking to enforce the non-compete has the burden of proof. And for the covenant to be enforceable, it must meet the following 3 requirements: be necessary to protect a legitimate business interest, be reasonable in time, geographic scope, and practice restrictions necessary to protect that business interest, and be otherwise consistent with the law and public policy. And another example is in Indiana. Other requirements are that the franchisee may recover damages, but action must be brought within 2 years. I talked about Louisiana last week. They make exceptions in their exclusion from non-competes for rural hospitals and hospitals in medically underserved areas and rural parishes. The thing that I have noticed is, I believe Representative Olson last week mentioned that it would be of interest to see how density plays out in different states. Louisiana is the only one where I have seen any reference to specifically to access and the density of healthcare practitioners and hospitals. Also, I have not come across any specifications about different roles in a company in any of these statutes. So nothing that has to do with whether or not someone is a director, partner, etc. Though in general state non-compete agreements or non-compete statutes, a partner or owner of a business selling the goodwill of a business, I believe, is subject to non-competes. All right, and beyond that, some new additions that I have that I didn't mention last week are the most recent non-compete policy updates. Are from early this year between January and March, coming from Arkansas, Utah, Virginia, and Wyoming. And in Arkansas, they have passed a bill that amends their pre-existing non-compete statute to include a subsection voiding any covenant not to compete that prevents a physician from practicing within their scope of practice. In Utah, they recently passed a bill that applies specifically to healthcare platforms, meaning that anyone who registers for a healthcare platform, any practitioner who registers through that, cannot be subject to a non-compete agreement through that platform. Virginia recently amended a bill. This is more of a general take on non-competes, not specific to healthcare. But yes.
No questions?
Okay. But it essentially, originally, the statute addressed low-wage employees and prohibited non-compete agreements for low-wage employees as defined by state law. This amendment takes that language out and applies it to all employees, while requiring that an exception be made if those employees are considered non-low wage and have received specialized training or education from the employer. My understanding is that that relates to the idea of protecting trade secrets. That, similarly to one of the previous ones I discussed, specifies that action must be brought within 2 years of three requirements, either the employee learning of the non-compete agreement, termination of employment relationship, or an attempt by the employer to enforce the agreement. And it's worth noting that things like that are not included in many of the statutes. There are only two that I've come across that include such detailed descriptions of actions that can be taken, damages that can be pursued. Turning from that, my final piece of the report today is that the Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs Committee took a look at H34 this week. They had been planning to for the last couple of weeks, but managed to get around to it finally this week. They took time to speak about it both on Tuesday morning and Thursday morning. I was only able to take a look at the Tuesday morning one. But on that, they heard testimony from Ledge Counsel Rick Sagel and Kirby Keaton. They heard from Major General Gregory Knight, Bob Burke, Director of Vermont Office of Veteran Affairs, Jay Ramsey, Director of Workforce Development at the DOL, and Michael Harrington, Commissioner at the DOL. And some updates to the bill that the Senate is taking a look at include Senator Brock has added an amendment to the bill that addresses purpose and intent and makes that section 1 of the bill. That amendment is included in the in my report document, which should be uploaded. And that essentially points out that the purpose of military recruitment is to enhance certain workforce shortages within Vermont. I highlighted those shortages as specified: construction, healthcare, and manufacturing, which it's noted in the purpose and intent section that is where veteran skills cross over. So the intent behind that, as Senator Brock put it, is that the next step in approaching this is to target military recruitment specifically to locations where they are highly employed in fields as described in that section. So he used the example of at some point recruiters went down to North Carolina, I believe it was, and were relatively unsuccessful in bringing back people. And I believe Senator Brock's understanding is that that was because they don't necessarily, part of it is certainly because of the tax implementations that the bill is seeking to address, but another part is that they don't necessarily work in the sectors that Vermont is hoping to boost its workforce in. The draft bill also includes an amendment that requires the ACCD, alongside the Office of Workforce Strategy and Development, to submit a report to the House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development each year by December 1st through the year 2029. And part of the amendment in section 1 also orchestrates that partnership between the ACCD and the Office of Workforce Strategy and Development. That, I believe, is all that I have to add today. I did, before I stop, I think I forgot to mention that Wyoming has also recently passed a bill regarding non-competes, and that bill applies generally, but also has a section specifically addressing physicians. And a common feature among a few of the bills is that they include a language that states that the patient be allowed to receive information or notice when the practitioner leaves and where they can follow that practitioner to and how. The difference in this one is that it requires that it be on patient request. And that is all I have to report to you today. I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions for Helen?
Thanks very much. Appreciate all your work.
Good stuff.
The healthcare information was very helpful. Yeah.
Good, I'm glad.
And did we mention we don't want you working for any other committees after you leave this one as an intern?
I don't recall entering into an agreement. I signed in.
Were there any states that had non-competes that were broader than just focused on healthcare? Like I was looking at Wyoming's and it does look, I mean, I haven't looked at it carefully to see whether or not there's any applicability beyond healthcare, but yeah.
Absolutely. So the vast majority of non-compete bills around the states are, I believe, broader. Either that or they are more specifically geared towards language that includes the word employees. So non-competes between employers and employees. I have not included that because I've been looking specifically at healthcare and franchises, but I'm happy to take a look at that as well. And if I am correct in remembering, there are 4 states that have quote unquote full bans, which, as far as I understand, doesn't include franchise agreements, but generally the idea is that they provide a full ban on non-complete agreements. Those states include Oklahoma, North Dakota, California, and Minnesota. And the vast majority of states have partial restrictions on non-competes, which means they have restrictions that include duration, geographic scope, things like that. And then there is a handful, including Vermont, as I'm sure you know, that don't have any regulation on non-competes as of yet. But I am also happy to take a look at those more general ones if you would like me to.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful for the committee to have that built into the spreadsheet also, as we start looking at this and realizing that, you know, we're not looking at this the same way as the rest of the nation is, and perhaps that's something that we need to understand better and understand if that's still the right way to do things here or not.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can include that going forward. And yeah, there's a lot of variety for sure.
Well, and the lovely thing with the spreadsheet is we can sort on healthcare, we can sort on general, we can sort on franchise. So if you put it all in that spreadsheet, we can make it work for.
Interested to know, Ellen, which states are also silent on the topic. That would be a really helpful thing, I think, for me as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Other questions, comments for Helen? We hope you're feeling better next week.
Thank you.
Do we want to try to do breakfast next week?
I don't know, we'll talk about that.
Okay,
At least one.
okay. All right, well, thank you.
Of course.
Thank you, Helen.
Thanks, Ellen.
Thank you.
Well,
Have a great rest of your day, guys.
Thank you.
Any info you're gathering from your committees? Shadow?
Government Ops is looking into generated AI, political stuff. And no, I mean, I know we've got a lot of AI stuff on our board, but not entirely sure if it really qualifies for our committee. I mean, I would like to get a hold of it just because it's,
I think
you
it'd
know.
be a good idea to keep an eye on it,
okay.
to see if it if it wanders into the realm of consumer protection, yeah, we do.
Yeah.
But also,
it's-
I think we want to know if there's intersections with data privacy, that type of stuff too, or with kids code.
It's mainly, the bill focuses on if you use generative AI for video, sound, or images, you have to disclose it. Otherwise you face,
Yeah.
otherwise, which is really difficult in a social media world when you use Snapchat and it adds the like glasses on. That's generative AI. And I don't know if they're aware of that. I use generative AI for like a couple of my things that did not disclose. I mean, when you're mushing me up into a little thing, you can tell it's generative AI.
And that's the whole point, is sometimes it's obvious.
Correct. But I mean,
It's getting better.
yeah, I mean, I can, with generative AI and Samsung, you can remove people just like that. But you can also do that with Photoshop, and you're not disclosing that when you do it with Photoshop.
But it doesn't cover text. That's where I hadn't looked at the bill. But
Yeah,
I
it doesn't.
pretty upset because,
Yeah.
I mean, if I use Grammarly, they use AI. Does that
Generative
mean
AI.
when I do up a post, I have to say, well, I did use Grammarly, but
Yeah.
I can go. Or do you have anything?
No, that was the only thing.
So human services, I'd say there's nothing that seemed, I mean, they're doing some interesting things, but nothing specific that I thought was super related to what we work on. Environment Committee, they did spend some time on Wednesday with 127. Although while interesting, it was not something, I mean, it was about development soils and kind of a new permit process that could, make it a little bit easier to deal with what they call development soils, which is like a step below brownfields. But they do have John Gray right after the floor today. And I'm assuming originally the schedule also had, I forgot her name, Ledge Council Chakowski. What's her first name?
Ellen?
Ellen Chakowski, but now she's not on the agenda, but I'm assuming with John in there talking about, specifically with the land use stuff, this morning. So I can watch that later.
Keep an eye on H458 too.
H450.
That's, it's looking at all the state government, where they're selling data.
Oh, is that
It's in,
it's in environment?
No,
No, I'm not doing energy.
It's energy.
And I've got Amy's committee, environment.
Actually, on that point, I can jump to transportation. They're working on H500, which is a review and like update of Act 69 from 2013, which allows for there to be traffic cameras when you're going through construction zones that will be focused in on people's on their license plates, and basically having an automated ticketing system that would, if people are speeding through, just write tickets. Now, the problem is though, that none of the police jurisdictions want to take possession of this program.
Is that in conflict with what we did a number of years ago that eliminated police from taking photos of people's license plates and running them through the system?
There's a lot of that. So the construction industry, the highway construction industry would like it because of completely reasonable safety issues. But because of some of those conflicts, and also like nobody knows where it would be stored, who wants to take like full possession of the
Well,
program.
how long is the retention
And how
period?
long's the retention period? Like all of these questions are,
Overs-
yeah, so it's definitely blown open all of those questions. And then also, I guess relevant to us is the data privacy, like our intergovernmental data privacy conversation. So
Interesting, because other states have been doing that for
that's
so long.
that's the thing, is like they're specifically citing like Massachusetts and Connecticut have programs. They brought in a lot of testimony about it. But particularly, I think most of those programs are run through the sheriff's office and the state police, and the state police has no interest in touching it because they're concerned about the amount of work, like how much data will that be coming in? And will they just get overloaded and they just don't have capacity?
So, I just talking with, Energy Digital Infrastructure, they looked at testimony on H11, which is consumer protection against broadband. I don't know. They're not planning to move it to us, but I don't know as if they need to. I mean, it's basically cracking down on the broadband companies. When you say you're gonna do 1 megabit or 1 gigabit of service, you better do it and create like a centralized complaint system.
Yeah, it's kind of. I know, I mean, I've got great broadband, but it's through Consolidated. But they do tell you when you sign up that it's in a range, right?
Yeah. It's,
So, unless you have fiber, then, depending on how many people are on, it's gonna fluctuate. And I think a lot of people know that. I mean, how can you hold somebody's feet to the fire when it's disclosed to you that, certain times of the day, you may not reach 100, you might drop down.
absolutely. And even talking with, my person over there, he's saying it's going to be a kind of a can of worms, some of that data is already available anyway. And, the broadband companies are saying it would be very, problematic. The other one I want to just flag is the H181 Act relating to residential and commercial building energy standards. The reason I say that is because they are talking about adding some additional regulation for making a building greener. And I say this because is this something we want to look at as we evaluate CHIP? Because we're talking about giving them financing. Should we look at allowing them to use this financing perhaps to make the building more carbon neutral?
Yeah, and I think that, I think that's one of the things that would be considered on the 80/90, if we make a split, to allow them to retain more of the, and I don't think we've talked about
Increment?
this, but,
Yeah.
there's a thought of if they retain a larger portion of the increment, provide more, mixed use or mixed income housing, that they can access that, and they also can access more improvements and have a list of what those improvements could be. So that, could be parking, could be sidewalks, could be digital infrastructure, public facilities. That could be, EV charging.
Those energy codes are a significant expense. I mean,
Exactly.
as we've increased the
Yeah.
energy code
You
requirements, which,
just say energy code, right, because
because we want that for the long term, right?
Yeah.
But it also makes everything more expensive.
be a good incentive.
So like that.
How that debate. So in terms of healthcare, they're deep into the Senate bill dealing with structural and pricing things. So nothing directly related to us, but big picture, pretty important for some of the workforce and other issues that we're talking about. Just picking up on Ways and Means. I got in touch with David White yesterday, really around the issue of how to define improvements. He's going to be testifying in Ways and Means, I think, this morning. And so
we've invited him.
What's that?
We've invited him to come in this afternoon.
There we go.
And I think Bob Flynn's coming in.
Oh, okay. Okay. I just wanted to highlight that.
And John will be in at 11:30 to go through another markup. we can look at, and we can have those discussions with Bob this afternoon as well. See where we can get to, and thank you for flagging that 206 is back.
Oh, yeah, it's on the notice. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that. It's on the notice.
Yeah. No, but like sent me email, so
Okay.
we'll is it a big change or?
No, but I didn't parse it yet.
Okay,
They look like technical changes, but I hadn't spoken to,
what's,
Rick.
can you see what Rick's, what his time looks like this afternoon? So let's see if he can come in at like 2:30 and just go over the change to 206. That way we're ready to roll.
Sure.
Tuesday morning, just to hopefully concur with it.
Yeah.
And it's done.
Yeah, I would think so.
Should I share what happened at that? Oh, Dave, I could share what happened at the Pepsi meeting yesterday. Would that be?
Yeah, let's get Dave and then.
Yeah, I was gonna report that ag has passed and on the notice calendar now, S60, which is creates the Farm Security Special Fund to provide grants for farm losses. They've added forestry operations. I don't believe they have any funding this year, but they want it to be effective this year so they can set up the actual board that will oversee dispensing of grants up to $150,000 for one farm operation or one forestry operation over the course of a year. So that's one that I've been keeping an eye on for a while, and the minute I go away, they passed sucker 8-0. But anyhow.
You might recall S-125, a bill about workers' compensation and bargaining rights that was briefly in our possession before it was spirited away to general and housing. So they've been taking testimony on that bill this week. Judiciary doesn't like it because some language in the bill would create a 4-person bargaining unit of supervisory employees. The State Employees Association supports one of the provisions, which is that you need to have a 51% of people in a bargaining unit that would want to have a vote to trigger. You need to have that threshold met before you have a vote to dissolve or to address the representation issue in a bargaining unit. It's currently down around like 30% or something quite low. So there's a lot of electoral activity that can happen, even if there's not a lot of interest in an election. And so that's bogging things down. They're doing more markup today. So it looks like any vote stuff is not a today thing. Corrections Institutions has been working on H32 about opioid use in correctional facilities for a long time. It looks like it's going slower than they thought it would go. And it may not even be ready to be voted out, but that's something that's taken up a lot of oxygen for them in the last few weeks. So they've sort of been with that a lot. That's all.
I can be very quick, but I've learned a lot about how Veggie works and how it gets, which is our economic incentive program, where a business can apply for and get an incentive to grow their workforce. I won't go into great details about it, but I'm just like looking at the statute and the way it's analyzed and things like that. There was a application that we reviewed yesterday for Vermont Packing House, which is a slaughterhouse meat packing facility in Springfield. Fascinating business with wide-ranging implications and importance really for our agricultural community. So if anybody wants to know more details, I'm happy to chat with them, but the end result was that we did approve it. And so assuming they're able to implement their plan, they will hopefully be growing rapidly over the next couple of years. And we'll need 30 more butchers and meat cutters. That also they were talking about their workforce development plans and how they connect with Vermont State University and things like that. So anyway, it is a slaughterhouse meatpacking facility in a former Ben and Jerry's ice cream factory. In Springfield.
North Bennington. Oh,
What's a different use for cows?
Yeah, right?
It's still cow.
Yes.
They're pouring in the Heath bar bits and everything.
Final option.
Flavor.
Hopefully they will not be, it sounds like they will not be going to Bennington if they,
No, this is good. I'm glad. That's good stuff. Good for them.
And of course, your initial part of that, where you're talking about veggie and using it to grow the workforce, that was not.
Oh my gosh, that.
Yeah.
Right. Take the seeds of.
On the floor, back here after the floor, we'll have just Art Lieben from Pepsi in to talk with us, and we'll hear from John at 11:30, then have a couple this afternoon, try to see if we can get Rick in here to talk about 206 to wrap the day up.